Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. You're with TalkTV. Now, Israeli border authorities have indicated that more border crossings could be opened for aid into northern Gaza. This follows calls from the Biden administration and indeed from the British government to get more crossings open, to get more aid into people in Gaza who are, we are told, right now starving to death from the lack of aid. Well, joining me right now in the studio is Tal Heinrich. She's a spokeswoman for the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Thank you so much for joining us, Tal.
My pleasure.
Look, there are a lot of people, a lot of governments, US, British government, and people like me, very supportive of Israel's right to self-defense and right to be in Gaza. You know, you've been attacked. You need to defend yourselves. You need to rid Gaza of Hamas. Fully supportive of all that. However, the toll on civilians in the Palestinian population in Gaza is now intolerable, clearly to some of Israel's closest allies. What is going wrong? Why is there not enough aid going in? Because your government keeps saying it is going in, but we're told by people on the ground that people are not getting the aid.
So to clarify some things, aid is going in. In fact, just this week, we had a record number of trucks daily getting inside, 277, for example.
Is that enough trucks given the number of the population?
So it's 50% more food trucks daily entering than what we had before Hamas started a war against us. The issue is not with getting aid in. This is what Israel has been facilitating. The issue is, the challenge is with distribution of aid. And here, I'd like to explain that our job has been one so far, to inspect the trucks coming in for very obvious reasons. We don't want to see ammunition funneling in or, dual-use materials that can be used for terrorist purposes. But the aid distribution mechanism was reliant on UNRWA and UN.
This is the UN aid agency, which
exactly.
There's been very big question marks about people and being even working for UNRWA who have actually been involved in the 7th of October.
They have been serving as a front for Hamas, and they were relying on, Hamas distribution, so to say. That's what they did, and they utterly failed. This is why there is a backlog of equipment and food and aid waiting on the Gazan side of the border. That has been the case every day since the beginning of the war, but we have placed no limits on the amount of food, of sheltering and medical supplies and water that can enter the Gaza Strip.
Okay, but hold on a minute. I mean, again, all sounds very convincing. Clearly isn't convincing to either Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in America or indeed to David Cameron, our Foreign Secretary here in the UK. We know there's been a lot of talk behind the scenes. They're also talking publicly, saying that Israel isn't doing enough, making it very hard for your allies, in which Britain and America have been the staunchest over the years, to actually support what's going on in Gaza. Now, I think, you every right for IDF forces to be going into Gaza, every right for them to be going into Rafah even. I completely support that. I'm afraid there are going to be civilian casualties. I completely accept also that Israel goes further than pretty much any other government in the world to try and prevent loss of life of civilians.
But also on the humanitarian aid issue, we've gone to unprecedented lengths, Julia.
You say unprecedented lengths, but people are clearly starving and children are dying of malnutrition. So clearly it's not good enough.
We want to better this mechanism. We weren't in charge of the distribution mechanism. Again, it was the United Nations international aid groups, and they haven't.
And another aid agency take over.
They haven't been doing their job. So this is why we're working in coordination now with international partners like the UK government, like the Biden administration, to better this mechanism of aid distribution, and with the private sector, private contractors inside Gaza, because we want to see the aid reaching the civilians of Gaza. Our fight is not with them. Our fight is with Hamas. Full stop.
The reality is, though, on the ground, this is not happening, and it's not happening soon enough. How long does this go on? I mean, Israeli forces have been in now for many, many months. We know that there's still Hamas soldiers holding up in Rafah. We know you've still got 134 or so hostages unaccounted for. Some of those may be dead, still trying to work on a ceasefire to get at least some of those, particularly the young women and children, out of Hamas clutches. And we wish you all the best in doing that. But how long is this tenable to continue?
Well, as long as it takes to complete the mission statement as we placed it, as we said.
If it's weeks, if it's months, if it's years,
it's not going to be. It's not going to be a long time because of the unprecedented pace and the progress that IDF forces have been making on the ground. Our goals are clear in this war that we didn't start and didn't want. We want to see all hostages coming back home. We want to see Hamas eliminated. And we want to see a Gaza that can never, ever pose a terror threat to us again. So we will accomplish all of these three goals. And we have, we've taken out the majority At this point, we're getting close to this point, the majority of the military capabilities, if it's the missile stockpiles, if it's the missile manufacturing capabilities, and if it's the terrorist and the terror infrastructure.
The tunnels.
We eliminated more than 13,000 Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists, and on top of that, apprehended thousands, injured thousands, so many of them are immobilized, but we still have these 4 operational Hamas battalions in Rafah that we have to take out.
And in terms of a ceasefire, lots of talk about what's going on behind the scenes, trying to get a ceasefire, talks in Egypt, talks in Qatar, elsewhere. What is the likelihood there would be a ceasefire during Ramadan? It starts this weekend, I think. And in terms of getting more of the hostages back, given what we are now learning more and more about the horrors that some of these hostages are enduring?
So first, a permanent ceasefire, one that would leave Hamas in power and our stolen people in Gaza, is not even a question.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is humanitarian pauses in the fighting. We facilitated this in the past, back in November, in exchange for the release of more hostages. We said we will agree to facilitate more of these, and we still stand by it. But the terms that so far have been presented by Hamas in the negotiations have been delusional, as the Israeli Prime Minister referred to them. They've been non-starters, as Secretary Blinken called them. And in fact, just 2 days ago, President Biden himself said that Israel has put on the table a rational offer. That was the president's word.
I think a lot of people are thinking, was it 100 Palestinian prisoners in return for each hostage? It was quite an extraordinary exchange. Let me bring in Philip Ingram. You're a former military intelligence officer. What do you make of what is going on and what more could be done?
It's hugely complex. And I think the balance between Israel's necessarily having to destroy Hamas, which is a virtually impossible task to do militarily, given their integration into the Palestinian society in Gaza in particular. That challenge is really difficult. But the balance between that and providing the aid to the innocent civilians out of there is one that the international community is now saying, we tolerated what was going on beforehand, but in this last bit where you're looking at getting rid of those last 4 battalions, the potential for it to go badly wrong is too great, and we can't deal with it.
But that's very difficult. It's a trade-off, though, isn't it, Tal, for you? Because, of course, we are seeing Israel sort of leeching away support from your international friends and allies. That could be an issue in the future.
It's a justified war. It's one of the most justified wars in history. And it's great to have support on your side. But we're fighting to stay alive. Yeah. We're fighting to stay alive.
It's really that simple.
I think the one thing Israel is losing is the information war at the moment, and it's getting back on the front foot of that. That's where Israel needs to start to do something to show to the international community all of the effort that is being put in.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Very much appreciate you joining us, Tal Heinrich there. She is the spokeswoman for the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Thank you for joining us here in the studio.